Hello, welcome to the February OAC TV broadcast. I'm James Zervios.
I'm Christy Kuna. Happy to be back with you here in the month of February. Gosh, time is certainly flying by, right?
Yeah, it's been a busy week. Valentine's Day this week.
It was Valentine's week. Yes, it was I think we're also kind of getting into spring break time come March,
Pretty
right?
soon.
Which is, next month we're going to be a little bit later in our broadcast just with schedules, so more to come on that. But happy to be back here and
Yes.
a great topic today, right?
A very good topic. Christy, last month we talked a lot about kind of changing the format a little bit for the broadcast and digging in more to the topics that we know our folks want to hear about, being a little bolder,
Yep.
I think, in our topics, right? And so we touched on people first language a little bit last month and kind of the implications behind that and why that's necessary. But today we have a really great topic in store.
Yeah, and our topic last month did prep us. So today it's all about, let's talk about language and imagery and what's appropriate or not. And today's going to be even more interactive than past episodes because we're going to show some real life visual examples. We have a wonderful special guest coming on to talk about this. But if you did miss the People First Language, you can go to our YouTube channel and view that. All of our broadcasts are available. But we know that so many opinions matter or differ on this topic of language and imagery. So we're excited to have Lisa Schaffer, who is from Obesity Canada. She's an OAC member, an advocate with Obesity Canada, who's a great partner of ours, but she's also wears another hat as a marketing expert, and she is so fantastic to talk about. So I'm excited to have her on.
Yeah, she was great. We do some dry runs with folks before the broadcast, and our conversation with her, if we could have recorded what we talked about with her earlier in the week, I think it would have been perfect to play that today. And the one thing we were missing, though, in that was your opinion. And that is something that we absolutely want to hear from folks throughout this entire broadcast, especially when we get to the topic with Lisa. Tell us what you think as well. Make sure you're commenting in the chat.
Yeah, so it is meant to be interactive, so stay along with us, keep that interaction going. So speaking of that, it's the perfect time to say hello to who is joining us from all over in our chat. Tell us who you are, why you're excited to be here. But to start off, we have a lot of Californians, I think, in the chat. We have Trish from California who's there. Welcome, Trish. We have Kelsey from Central Illinois. Welcome, Kelsey. Nice to have you.
And it looks like we have Sherry from New York. Hi, Sherry. How you doing?
And, of course, Patty from Virginia.
Patty.
Could be
Hi,
esteemed
Patty.
Chair Patty Niece. Hey, Patty. Hope everyone's staying warm. We always talk about the weather, right? It seems.
Well,
yes.
yeah, I was, 35 on Sunday and 86 today
Here in Florida. So we're in Florida for the newcomers here. But keep the conversation going in the chat. Tell us anything you want about, the topic, about why you're here. This is our time to get to interact with you. And you also want to chat because...
Because that is how you can win a giveaway. And we're changing it up this month. We've been giving away a lot of Stop Weight Bias mugs, but we have a very, very special OAC tumbler right here. So again, this is excellent for hot beverages, cold beverages, whatever you want. So we'll be giving two of these away later on in the broadcast.
And these are highly coveted. We haven't given them away in quite some time, so all the more reason to keep that conversation going in the chat. But before we do that and get into our main discussion, which we want to hear from you guys on that topic, let's dive into first a couple major updates here at OAC. We always like to let you know all the things that are happening. First up is on educational opportunities. So we have a number of things that we continually offer throughout the year. So the ones coming up to take note of, the OAC Health Talks. You've heard us talk about this. We had a great health talk last month, so you can check that out on our YouTube channel or in the resource library as well if you've missed that. But our next health talk is going to be in March. So March 31st, mark your calendar. We're going to live stream the topic that is featured on eating disorders, a very important topic to our community. It's going to be presented by Dr. Connie Stapleton. We're so excited. She's one of the greatest experts on this topic, so happy to have her as part of it. Make sure you sign up for these health talks because I know library. And then speaking, I'll keep on with education for a moment, but convention. So, we had a huge announcement last broadcast about our plans for convention that are coming up. May 14th through the 15th is our YWM virtual event. We're excited about that. Plans are still in the works. We promise you dates and registration opening is going to be available quite soon. So all the more reason, stay tuned to those channels. You see ywmconvention.com on your screen. You can go there and get signed up for all of the latest and greatest in our e-news alerts. But lots to look forward to with that. And our convention committees are so busy at work. I think we're on calls at least on a weekly basis with all those plans. So we're excited. We hope you are too. So make sure you are staying in the know on those topics.
Yeah, shifting to advocacy for a sec, Christy. So OAC was honored to be a part of a listening panel with the National Institute of Health, NIH, and it was their Obesity Research Task Force. Several members of the OAC shared their lived experience with obesity, and we're talking about pushing for measures more accurate beyond BMI. And they also had an opportunity to educate this group on weight bias. And this is a huge thing for NIH to ask OAC representatives to come in, talk more about that lived experience, because I think so often obesity is oversimplified in a lot of ways. And so it was great for OAC to have representation there. So on the advocacy front, kudos to all of the OAC members that took part in that. And speaking of advocacy, Christy, it's a big week coming up.
This is your week coming up on your team,
this
right?
It is.
I'm no pressure.
It is. So in exactly 11 days, it will be Obesity Care Week 2022. February 27th, Sunday, February 27th, kicks it off. This is the week where we are aiming to change the way we care about obesity. Now is the time to act is this year's theme, and we're really focusing on so many topics that we've covered on this broadcast: access to care, weight bias, changing the perceptions around obesity, childhood obesity, prevention and treatment, and so much more. We also have a lot of exciting videos that have taken place throughout the past couple weeks that we filmed. We have interviews with all the leaders from the obesity organizations. We have leaders with the top medical professionals in the field of obesity. And we also have interviews with two very influential legislators when it comes to the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act. You want to know who they are? You got to sign up for OCW alerts.
I saw what you did there.
A little teaser there. You're going to want to definitely join us for Obesity Care Week. You can go to the website, obesitycareweek.org, sign up for the alerts, follow us on social media, and please be a part of what we're doing in the next couple weeks. There's a lot of actions planned for that week, a ton of information. We need your help in sharing this information, and we need you to help us take action.
Well, and I think what's important is I know awareness weeks are kind of broad, right?
Yes.
You think, okay, well, you have a whole week to spread notice on something, but in our community, this is such a crucial week because it's not just about awareness about obesity. It's about awareness about care. And that's one thing that really separates OAC out and our work from so many other great work that's happening, because we focus so much on not just the prevention side, but treatment. And that's when we talk about obesity care. That's why it is so important that we highlight this, because OAC exists because the idea of treatment and care was really pretty much lost in the conversations. How do you help people who are truly in the moment needing an intervention of sorts? And so that's why I really love Obesity Care Week, that it highlights this in a way that makes the conversation shift a little bit, which is really one of the reasons why OAC is here and why we exist. So kudos to your team on such great work happening already. I'm excited. I haven't seen some of those videos. I've gotten word of them, so all the more reason to I will make sure I'm signed up too to take part. So very, very cool. And to round everything out, though, we do want to remind you with all these topics, that we still want to hear about the things you want to know and have us discuss with you on this broadcast. So you can always send those bold, thought-provoking topics to visit that link that you see right underneath here. Fill out the form. Tell us what you want to know. We really do take all of that into account. Actually saw in the chat here
we have a topic right here.
Yeah,
so Sherry says she wants to hear more about bias and shaming, even though it's not as bad as it used to be. And Sherry, that's an interesting concept. And Christy, I think we've seen this through a lot of the research that OAC is a part of, where, yes, external explicit shaming has been down, but the internalization of weight bias has actually increased over time. So, Sherry, I think a great point there. That's one of the key focuses of OAC and what we do. So again, I mean, these are all things that we're going to continue to cover on this broadcast.
Yeah. So on that note, I think it's time we can dive into that main topic today. I'm really excited about this topic because I think we're taking it to the next level. We're going to show some real examples. We are going to be able to really unpack some of these simple words that we use all the time. So what is appropriate when it comes to our language and imagery? And, really, why does it matter? How does it make an impact? And so, last month we did talk about this with our People First language, which was a great discussion. But we know so many opinions differ on this, right?
Yeah, they do. And I think opinions differ for a lot of reasons. We know that there's a lot of different global opinions on this. So all over the world, people view obesity very differently. And I think that it's important for us to unpack this, and we have a great special guest today to do that. But I think even here in our own organization, we talked about people first language last month, but for many years when OAC first started, we used the word obese in all of our language, and brochures, articles, everything. And as time progressed, OAC adopted people first language, and we really pushed that as a major point today to help combat weight bias. So I do think it's going to be good to dig into this even deeper.
So let's take the conversation to the next level, and I can think of no one better to have this conversation with than Lisa Schaffer, who is one of the most passionate advocates you'll ever meet. She is the chair of the Public Engagement Committee with Obesity Canada, patient advocate, but she also has a very important dual expertise in her real life job, right? Our volunteers have real life jobs as a long-standing career in marketing, and she really is an expert on this topic. So Lisa, we are so excited to have you join us. There you are. Good to have you on OAC's monthly broadcast. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation.
It's going to get good, right? So yeah, we're making it more interactive too. And I think, again, a good call out to folks, be part of this conversation with us as we're talking. Tell us what you all think. We'll bring you all into the conversation that way. But as we start out, maybe let's talk first about why this is so important. When we think about language and imagery and why do we really need to worry about this in the cause that we serve? So what's your take on that?
I think it's super important because we know that we have all been raised and steeped in this diet culture, for lack of a better idiom at the moment, that really simplifies, to your point earlier as well, James, really simplifies what people understand as obesity. And that's really one of our big key challenges, is really educating not just those of us that live with obesity, but the general public needs to also have a reset on what they understand and believe obesity to be, because it isn't what we have been told for so long. So we need to be the constant, because that's going to continue to be the variable. So to me, that's why the words we use and the images we use are so important.
No, absolutely. And I think that this idea that I think we talk is, it's what you talk about, understanding. We all recognize we have to do better in this realm, but this conversation hopefully is going to drive more understanding, which we admit that we need to do more to influence that change broadly. And that's what you're talking about, language and imagery, right?
Absolutely. And we also need to recognize that this is a tangled ball of Christmas lights. Let's be honest, right? Our understanding of the disease continues to evolve as well. And it's very challenging for people to be wrong, but we'll talk about that more in a second as well. But there's a lot of factors that are in there that people need to help us untangle, because it isn't black and white. Life would be really a lot easier if everything could be black and white, but we know that really isn't the case. We live in shades of gray. Not all people who are living in a bigger body necessarily have obesity. People in smaller bodies don't necessarily not have obesity as well. So it's really hard, because we've put this measure of weight as the incorrect metric for so long. And for those of us that do live in bigger bodies, it's out there for everyone to see. It's not like other diseases where you might not know if somebody's a diabetic. You, in your mind, can very quickly assess if I have obesity, and then what does obesity mean to you? That means that's what it's about for me. That I might not be educated enough, that I'm maybe being lazy, all of those things. And I'm sure we'll tuck into that too.
Yes.
And Lisa, we talked to you earlier this week. As a fellow marketer, I think it's important to recognize that. I remember years ago they would say somebody has to see something 7 times before it resonates, right? And then I saw a statistic not too long ago that was up to 11. And then, the average person sees something now for like 2.3 seconds or 3 seconds, and then you lose them. And I think one of the things that we talked about was how someone can see an image depicting obesity in a certain way. Maybe it's in a news story, and we have an example of that right here that we'll share with you, that the image is what sticks. And then it's everything else that came after it that the person really didn't focus on, or maybe even read or comprehend or whatever. And we're going to talk about that, and we have an example that we want to share with you to kind of get that gut reaction. But then I want to scroll up a little bit and then talk about the headline with it as well.
Ooh, bring it on! Bring it on!
So you can see
I'm already mad.
You're already mad. Yeah, I don't blame you. So I mean, what are your initial thoughts, right? Like, you've seen this for 5 seconds now. I mean, does this not perpetuate
shameful.
every stigma?
oh my God, every stigma possible. And this is so shaming. Who would want to be that person on the stretcher? I don't even know what this article's about, but like, what could this article possibly bring that's going to help that person that's being depicted in the stretcher, which I'm assuming that's what the article is going to be about, not the exhausted poor NHS members that are carrying a stretcher as though they're in World War One. Also, let's be honest. Yeah, that's really, to me, that's really harmful and shameful. Like, when would this scenario ever exist? It wouldn't, so it's false. And what story am I telling with this image?
Well, and so I'm going to scroll up to
interested.
the headline, and then we're going to dive into some word usage as well. But we can start with this for a second, just to kind of get the prompt going. But if you look at this, obesity is not a disease of sloth and gluttony.
No,
Doesn't
that
really
is not
support.
at all the title that I was expecting to see paired with that image. Wow.
Yeah, and I think those initial reactions are so important to see, because when we all first saw that image, it was like, oh my gosh. And then I know you're a big fan of context mattering, right?
Yes,
but how can you get away from the
absolutely.
context by that image that's there? And unfortunately, we'll see this in another exercise in a moment. We see this so often.
And we know that our brain absorbs and synthesizes visual information quicker and easier than any other kind of information that our brains can receive. We also need to zoom out for a second and just talk about the world we live in right now, which I want to give everybody a hug and a smack at the same time, let's be honest. But the world we live in right now as well, we're just, the world feels so small, and there's so much that has changed in how we're using our brains as well. Our frontal lobes, that are our executive functions, are exhausted because nothing feels easy right now. So therefore, we're also just going to default and just move really quickly through things. I think that's part of why the tick and the talk is becoming that much more popular. We know that, short form video isn't going anywhere. Content is moving really quickly. But to your point, and the language I use often at work and with my clients, is what's the sticky part? And when I say that, I mean, what do you want people to remember from this, and what you want them to stick with them? That title is probably what they want people to have be sticky, that this isn't a disease of sloth and gluttony. But let's be really honest, what's the stickier part? That horrible image. So this might be an amazing article that actually supports everything that I believe, but it is negated out the door with that image.
Which you're absolutely right, actually, because we've read this article, and this is no call out to this, and it was an older article, to be fair, but it was one that popped up first and foremost on this Google search. And so, the context of the article was really actually well-meaning, but you kind of can't get past that. And we have a couple folks sharing these reflections as well.
Awesome.
And we have one of our Zakia, I think, says images and language shape perception ideas. When we share images that point to the positive, mindsets are shifted, right?
Yes.
How great would it be if we had nothing but good positive images? Maybe we'll get to that in a moment when we have more examples. But absolutely, I agree with you so much. Yeah.
No, that's a really good point too, because it should almost be a non-conversation. I know we're not there yet, but it would be lovely for, people that are in larger bodies, which again doesn't necessarily equal obesity, that we could just show up in places and it not be a major part of our plot point either, like just that we exist in this world and we're around.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back, I think, to more images, but let's shift back to language for a moment, right? Because we've talked a lot about this. So, and let's be fair, one of the things that prompted this discussion was some of the global work that we've been doing together, where we had a lot of differing opinions on the right types of word usage to use, even in our industry. So we're going to pick on a very simple term that people are going to go, why are you even talking about this? But it matters. But let's talk about the word obesity, okay? So the word obesity, of course, is in OAC's, that's in our title. It's in OC's title as well. Obesity is a disease, the cause that we serve. But it does carry a lot of negative connotation for folks. And there's some believers that say, I don't want to use the word obesity. It doesn't attract me. Then there's some that say, I want to use this word because this is, a real disease. So I'm really curious on your take and how you handle that two-sided conversation.
Nice. Yeah, this is a really big one. And this is one that I can say my personal experience of this as well, because I was a person who really invested in understanding this disease that I lived with. I had tried a few different options, including having vertical gastric sleeve surgery. And I didn't get to where I thought I still needed to be. And I thought that I was still the problem. And that really prompted me to dive in and really understand what I live with. And that was a big epiphany for me. And that led me to meeting Obesity Canada, where I volunteer, and I volunteered since 2017. My ability to say I volunteer with Obesity Canada is so much easier now than it was in 2017. Even saying Obesity Canada or obesity felt like knees and elbows coming out of my mouth, because I've been so conditioned that it was like kind of like how in the 1950s we used to whisper the word cancer. You don't really talk about obesity like that. It's very shameful. It's not an empowering word to bring into your lexicon. And now I see it very, very differently. But we also need to remember that words and meanings aren't the same universally for everyone. So, the example I use with this when I'm talking to clients as well is if my mom made a tuna fish sandwich with Miracle Whip and your mom uses mayonnaise, we actually kind of experience two different tuna fish sandwiches, but we can both call them tuna fish sandwiches. So sometimes it's important to slow down and explain what we mean, which is why when we use the word obesity in advocacy and when we're talking to people, we really disclaim or unpack it for people is a better way to say that we're talking about this adipose tissue that is impairing your health. It isn't about, body size onto itself, all of those factors. And that's a really important nuance. But this is also where I believe that we do need to treat obesity as a disease and be comfortable saying that word. I'm happy to also evolve. I think part of what we need right now is everybody being willing to be a little bit wrong and evolve their thinking. To your point earlier as well, you moved into person first language over time. When we know better, we do better. And that's okay. It's okay if you used to say it a different way and it wasn't okay. It's also okay to set the stage and say, that word's uncomfortable for me. Can we use a different word? But I don't know if I got to where we were going this, but obesity in general, I think is a really important word to define and to claim, quite frankly, as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, when looking at that first image we just looked at, I think when people see this term obesity, they automatically look at that horrible cartoon that was put out there, because that's how people are depicted who have obesity. And so I think that's part of this like dual-ended conversation with it. But I think we can agree with this too. OAC has taken, we've been here almost 17 years. The stuff we used to talk about and how we talked about it has evolved over time. But these teachable moments are so important to growing this movement and to bringing more understanding. And I think that's a central point here, is just this broadening this understanding. And there's another word that we're going to talk about too.
Well, I think before we jump to the second word, I think it's important that, and Lisa pointed this out, that when you have that word obesity and then you have an image like we saw a few minutes ago underneath it, that's really what gets burnt into somebody's memory. So especially
marketing side.
If you're someone dealing with obesity, that probably fueled the internalization or the internalized weight bias that you're dealing with. You think like, well, that's me. And then if you're somebody that's not dealing with obesity, you look at that and say, that's what obesity is.
That man doesn't even know he shouldn't be having a hamburger while he's in the hospital.
Right.
Well, that's how silly we are. That is not the case, and that is not the truth. I have met hundreds of us. Who would never do that.
No, it's true. And so we have a reflection from Deb, and she was saying that obese is a medical term, which we see obese being on a chart, a BMI chart. So obesity as a descriptor to her doesn't bother her, because obesity itself is used, and I think in that right connotation in that medical setting, but it isn't one of those where it's attached completely to that one image, for instance, that we just saw. So I think that's an interesting perspective, and y'all keep those perspectives coming, because we're going to talk about another word that we're really curious on group thought on. So maybe
and so, I think Deb, maybe it was a good segue from Deb to talking about a medical chart and the kind of the medicalization of obesity, and how we sometimes refer to people with obesity as patients. Some people we know identify as patients. Some people don't identify as patient. You say, well, does me being under the care of a medical professional make me a patient? But what's your take on that, Lisa? I mean, when you hear the word patient, because it's used very commonly throughout the obesity community. In fact, I know even OAC sometimes they'll say, do you guys have like a meeting? I say, yeah, we have an annual patient meeting. But then I'm like, well, but is it a patient or is it for people with obesity? So what do you think about the word patient?
I think for where we are today, in people's understanding of obesity, it really supports the narrative that I believe that I'm working hard when I do my advocacy work for people to understand. So I think there's actually power in, again, referring to us as a patient community. I can also respect and understand that that might not be the case for everyone. I believe in body autonomy. I also believe in body diversity. And this isn't about, swiping everybody with one brush. And that's another part of the challenge here. Care needs to be highly individualized, and we need to think about it in those terms as well. So I personally think patient is powerful, especially in the moment we're in, where we're trying to get people to understand that this isn't, as the headline said, about sloth and gluttony. It's really complex, and that's how I see the patient word. And for where we are today, I think it is the right word to use, and it really supports the work that we're trying to do in getting people to understand that this is a chronic relapsing disease. People that have this are going to live with this for their entire lives, and treatments need to be diverse and explored, and we need more research, and we need people not to feel shame about seeking care for this as well. My reference is often, I've had great success with some pharmaceuticals. I still have a moment every now and then where I'm like, should I be, do I still need to take this? Is this really where I'm at? Instead of looking at it like my glasses that I've worn since I was 5. And I don't at any point wake up and go, why haven't I gotten over my astigmatism by now? Right? Like, we need to help people really frame this, that this is not about willpower on any level.
I love your analogies. I think that's like, in so much time, I've learned so much from just your analogies, drawn from your mom sometimes too.
Oh yeah.
But no, Sandy, yeah. But no, I think what you said is so true, that I think that like this idea, and this is how imagery also shapes all the language side of it too. But I love what you said about really, it's almost like meeting folks where they're at. I think we believe strongly obesity is a chronic relapsing disease. And we hope that we can get that message across for a number of reasons, because it is medical, right? But I think this balance between when someone is a patient, isn't a patient, for some people it might not matter to them, right? Because they're an individual who is living with the disease, whether or not they're actively seeking care or if they're on the journey, wherever they are, it's meeting where they're at. But I think that what we're trying to do is draw that understanding. I think that is what ultimately this whole conversation is about. And as part of this is more of this imagery and how we want obesity to be seen. And I think that's also a question with that, is that as a patient community, what is the world we want to have depicted when it comes to something that so many of us struggle with?
Yeah. Well, you think if you think about how obesity is currently thought of with images, and we'll talk about that in just a second, I think you could see why people don't want to be associated with the term obesity, right? Because they say, well, if I identify as having obesity, then I am this, right? I am what I see on a daily basis, versus what some other diseases portray, especially when it comes to imagery, or what people think of from an image sense.
Yeah. And
I think that's huge. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm just going to make one little point, Christy. Yeah. And I think I mentioned this the other day as well. One of the most available treatments for everyone is education about this. What you do with that education is still going to be up to you. But as people who have probably lived with obesity their whole lives, we are in a state of distress. We also are not a cohort of people that necessarily knows how to show up for ourselves in clinical settings in particular as well. We don't often feel that we can say, like, actually, I'm here to talk about my earache, not my weight. And we really need to teach ourselves and our fellow patients that we have that authority. We can do that. We can ask to not be weighed. We really need to understand and empower patients. And the best way to do that is with education. And I would say we need to do the same for healthcare practitioners too.
Agree, 100%. And just one sharing before we jump to the next exercise, which I think is very interesting. We also have Deb sharing that she's torn about the word patient because she doesn't consider herself a patient because she's not under medical treatment for obesity, but she is managing obesity with the tools she has. So she prefers to call herself a survivor. So I know we've heard that term before, and I think own it, right? Like, I think that's the message here, is that there isn't a right or wrong in any of this, but it's just a matter of whatever we need to get to that level of understanding about obesity as a chronic relapsing disease, let's do it, right?
Whatever is going to make you feel confident and comfortable to show up for yourself and seek the care you deserve.
100%. Yeah. Well, let's move on to this last exercise, because I think this one's really interesting. So I know you have stuff to share, James.
Yeah. So Lisa,
James is over the keyboard.
Well, I'm getting ready. But one exercise we did, in kind of preparation for this month's broadcast was we looked at, if you go to Google and you type in the word obesity in the images, what comes up. So these are the top results right here. I mean, I think this is always a famous one you see right here with the tape measure, and here it is again. I think, one common theme here is any of the pictures of real people seem to lack a head, with the exception of this woman. And then what do you know? The image that we saw a little bit earlier repeats right there. But it's a lot of the same type of images, tape measures, the belly shot.
And look how sad she looks too.
Yes.
Can't be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And although I'm not seeing them here, but one thing I've often seen quite frequently is somebody eating an extremely large amount of food or something unhealthy. Here you go, the jelly donut, that type of imagery. So interestingly enough, if you did the same exercise with another disease, let's pick cancer. Let's try that one. What do we get? Well, interesting.
That's a bit more clinical, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Just a touch. Completely different type of imagery coming up in here.
Yeah, the science is really supported right here by these cancer images.
Ooh, that's a good way to phrase that.
Right. And so I think what's interesting about this exercise is to say, is that the future we want to see, that people, when they think of the word obesity, they're not looking at large silhouettes, they're looking at the clinical things that are happening within the system that is leading to them having a disease. So I think we're not saying that's where we want to be. I think it's an interesting discussion to think about that, because also if we did this exercise for other disease states, it's the same thing. We are really one of the only disease states represented by that visual of what it looks like to live in a larger body.
It's so harmful and so hurtful. And it's harmful and hurtful on a day-to-day, minute-by-minute social level for a lot of humans, but it's also really harmful for those of us that are trying so hard to change this narrative and really help people understand how much this is not about your willpower. I spent years, hours, days, months probably on a treadmill and logging every food bite that went in my face. I was never going to be able to touch the part of my brain that needed the support of treatment. And that is just the truth. And the more people that can understand how much this is a disease of the brain and how much the treatment options are not things that you could do yourself, the easier it's going to be for everyone to embrace the correct narrative that overeating does not cause obesity. Obesity causes overeating. And it's a simple shift, but it's a big one for a lot of people.
You talked there a couple seconds ago that I was latching on to a couple words. You said there was a time where you were on a treadmill logging every single thing you ate. And so I think when you look up like obesity or weight gain or anything like that, you see a picture of a treadmill. You'll see a picture of a food journal, but you probably won't find a picture of a brain, right? Nope. And I think that's important here is that at the end of the day, what do we as a society, we as a community want to see portrayed when somebody types in Google in images obesity? I mean, in a perfect world, is it more of what you see if you type in cancer? Or even early in the week, we typed in diabetes, right? Mm-hmm. And you saw a lot of blood monitoring pictures or people, doing the finger prick and then putting it on the test strip. But you didn't see people eating these unbelievable amount of food on plates or anything like that, because that imagery is different. It feels different. But I think what you see with obesity just continues to perpetuate that stigma. It continues to fuel that mindset that people are stuck with when they think of the image aspect of obesity.
Absolutely. And especially like the cartoon image, and I know I've seen them in my life as well, where there's actually a human like standing on a scale in a doctor's office while eating something. Like that doesn't happen. And B, that only perpetuates this misconception that it is all controllable by food and exercise. Food and exercise are great healthy behaviors that absolutely all of us should figure out how to bring into our life. It is not to say that it is not at all part of the realm of obesity, but it is not the holy grail and it is not the savior of all things. And that's really a big part of this is by doing those things and representing it that way with images, we're helping people to believe that weight is a behavior. And it isn't a behavior.
Yeah. 100%. And I can't tell you all the flood of comments I'm getting.
Oh no.
So many
In support of
coming
you,
in.
I'm telling you,
Okay.
you are moving people, which is wonderful. Excellent points, Lisa. Obesity is considered the fault of the person, intentional rather than a disease. You have a lot of sticky points yourself that I think folks latched onto.
One thing we're getting here that so a lot of people in the chat are liking the phrase that you said: overeating does not cause obesity. Obesity causes overeating.
Yeah, and I think we have some science to back that up, right? And that's the clinical side of it, right? And so
yes, our brains are not functioning correctly, and that is not a fault of anyone. It's where we are. It's genetic. It probably had things to do with your mom, not even before you were in utero, before you were an idea.
Yeah. No, and so because you are sharing and imparting so much wisdom, we have the age-old question is, what do we do about this, right? So, we know these things are a problem, and we can probably talk, at hours length, but we're coming up on our time, but we probably need to unpack this more. But from your perspective, what are the simple things that we can be doing to change this? Simple might be a little Sorry.
bit of an overstatement, but no, that's okay. No, I
Easy.
agree. And I think I said this to you guys the other day, the toothpaste is out of the tube. It's going to be really hard to clean this up, but the best thing we can do is work on cleaning this up. And the way that we can do that is really by being consistent and using language, but helping people understand what we mean by that language and being consistent with it. And quite frankly, getting a little more comfortable being uncomfortable. And saying things when you hear a fat joke that you don't agree with. I do a little bit of subterfuge when I'm at the grocery store and I see, Women's Week telling me that I can lose 21 pounds in 14 days. I often flip the front one around so the headline isn't visible. So that might be a simple thing that we can do to help change the narrative, but it really is about getting educated and getting empowered. And again, meeting yourself where you are today. Do I need every person to go bang on doors with me on the hill? I would love it. But if that's not where you are, that's okay. But I want everybody to just feel a little bit prouder and a little bit more empowered to talk about obesity, to find the words that matter to them and that they're comfortable using. But however it is that makes them feel more confident in recognizing this is not about willpower. This is not a weakness. This deserves care, rigor, and attention like any other chronic disease.
Amen. I couldn't have said it any better. And I think it's safe to say that you have provided that empowerment and just articulated this so beautifully, which is, I knew this was such a great conversation for you. Thank you so much. We hope to have you back on another broadcast. We can unpack some more controversial topics, right? It's fun.
I love it. I'm happy to stay in the room and help uncomfortable conversations because we're all just people. And that's really important, I think, right now more than ever. People need to give space and grace for people to also change their ways of thinking and embrace new things rather than being like, well, last time you said you weren't doing vegan food.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lisa. It's always such a good time. Great to see you. Thanks for all your
pleasure.
Support all the time. And we hope to have you back on another broadcast.
Sounds fantastic. Thank you both for all that you're doing. Thank you for everybody who joined today. Get loud with us.
Yes.
Thank you.
I like that. Take care. Bye.
Take good care.
Yeah. Well, no, I absolutely could talk to her for hours, and I think it is safe to say that the folks in the chat are really, really fired up.
And she had so many good giveaways there. And because of time, we had to let her go. But if you think about, she talked about when you're in your doctor's office, you're there for an earache, you don't have to be weighed, right? You can tell them, no, we're not doing that today. I think I really loved the empowering tone that she had because I think that's what we can help drive that change is by people owning all of this a little bit more, being bolder. It's a common theme you're going to hear us keep saying on this broadcast, but being bolder, being a little bit more aggressive as well.
Well, we'll deliver on that. So we have come to the end of the broadcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, but I know you're waiting, waiting to see who the lucky winners are of our coveted OAC tumblers. I will start us off by congratulating Corinne. Corinne, you are going to be the lucky winner of one of these tumblers. So we will reach out to you, get your info, but congratulations. Who else?
And we also have Zakiah Kyles. You have won the other OAC tumbler, so congratulations to you. Very active in the chat
Excellent.
today.
So good reminder too, we've got great giveaways every month, but invite your friends and family to join this great conversation. Yep. We're going to promise you they're going to continue to be bold and thought-provoking and continue the conversation. Quick reminders on Obesity Care Week.
Yes, look, it's coming. So sign up for alerts. We need your support. We need your activation on that important week, February 27th or March 5th. Visit obesitycareweek.org to sign up for the Obesity Care Week alerts. We are very excited, coming down to the wire, and we definitely need your help.
Yeah, we have a lot of other great reminders. So we have our Health Talks coming up March 31st. Make sure you're completing that form to tell us what you want to hear more about. We have convention coming, all the reason why you need to make sure you're connected to what we do, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, because that is a great way that you're going to get all of the updates when we're going live. We're doing this more often, but good link for you to go take a peek. Make sure you're subscribed there. But from us to you, thank you so much for spending this time with us. We really enjoy it. We'll see you next month. We'll send you some updates on when that's happening. And we hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their February.
Goodbye.
Take care.